Hi, and welcome to the last part of uFrame 1.5 Getting Started series. In this part, we're going to implement sounds. We have a lot of things defined for our character, tons of properties and computeds as well as states, but the cool thing about this is that now we can subscribe to absolutely any event which happens with our character. So now we're going to modify our view, but I'm not going to place the sounds directly on the view. Instead, I will introduce a view component, which is kinda part of the view. I'll call this one character sounds. And I will link my view to this view component, and save and compile. View components are fairly simple because those are just mono behaviors which are linked to a specific view. That is why I can just add a component for my game object called character sounds. It requires a view to be set, but as soon as we have it on the same object as the view, we do not have to specify this. The script is empty, and you cannot see mono behavior right here, but it's partial, and the inheritance is defined in the second part of the class, which is in the designer files. So uFrame keeps it as clean as possible. Inside of this class, you can override bind method. It does totally the same what bind method on the view does, except here you receive a view which this component belongs to. Before we actually start using the bind method, let me introduce a public property called jump, which will be an audio clip, and let it be jump sound, and also a private audio source. Then I will override a wake method and cache the audio source. If you remember, we perform jumping when the jump state set to do jump. That is why here I can use view.bind property character.jump state property, and the handler will be jump state changed. Here I can compare the current state to something like do jump, I guess. And inside of it, I can call audio source dot play one shot jump sound. On the character object, on the component called character sounds, you can now specify jump sound. So I will set it to my jumped sound from sound folder. Hit play, and now we got a sound for jumping. Well, this is very simple, but what if I don't want to play the sound when I do double jumping? In this case, I can add a condition. I will take my character and ask it if the is on the ground property equals to true. Back to the scene now. Awesome. Now we're going to implement footstep sounds. We have to play the sound repeatedly, and also we have to control states, which may sound complicated, but probably you will be surprised how easy it is. I will add another audio clip called footstep sound. Now I will subscribe to movement state property. Now let's check the states. And this is where we kinda have to start the sound. So I will use observable.interval with time span set to something like 240 milliseconds. And I will subscribe to this. And I will play the sound. I will also specify a volume scale. The only thing here is that I do not want to play the sound when I'm in the air. So I will add a condition if character.jumpState is not in the air. Well, when my movement state is changed to one of those values, I'm going to start playing the sound. But I want to stop at some point. To be more specific, I want to stop when the state is changed again, because it can either change to other move state and I will start playing the sound again, or it may be changed to stop or idle state. So I will dispose it when character dot movement state property is changed. In the inspector, I can now specify a footstep sound, and I have one prepared. Play the scene. Perfect. I have a couple more sounds prepared, which are landed sound and coin sound. Coin sound can be easily implemented using bind command executor. I can bind to character dot pickup coin command. And in the handler, I will play the sound. Landed sound can be implemented by binding to is on the ground property and checking if the value is set to true. But as you can see, we got a lot of if statements in our handlers. So I'm going to show you a little trick of how to avoid those checks in the handlers. Instead of using view.bind property, I'm going to directly take the character.is on the ground property and select those events where it is set to true. Then I can subscribe to it and invoke a handler called landed. And here I can play the sound. The difference between bind property and subscribing to the property directly is that in the first case, uFrame will manage your binding as well. This means that when the view or view model is disposed, this binding is going to die. But in case you are directly subscribing to some property, it's a good practice to dispose it with the object where you define this binding. In my case, this binding manages some sounds on the view, so I'm going to dispose it with the view. The other difference is that bind property filters those events where the property was set to a value but was not actually changed. What I mean is once your is on the ground property is set to true and you set it to true again, all of this is going to be invoked because I don't filter the duplicates. That is why I'm going to add distinct until changed. This will filter all the duplicates. So I will only get my subscription invoked when the value was false, and then it got set to true. So let me specify coin sound and landed sound. Perfect.